Hello and welcome to Film Seizure. We're in the last month of 2023, December, and I have the distinct privilege of picking all of the movies this month, which, I don't know, I guess maybe I was feeling rather depressed when I picked these movies because they do have an edge to them. There's no real theme other than I've quite enjoyed movies lately that I liked as a kid, but I feel like I didn't understand them. So for the first movie this month, I chose The Ice Storm. With me to discuss The Ice Storm is Jeff, who really, really wants to talk. So I'm going to keep talking so he can't talk. Go ahead, Jeff. Say hi.
Hey, how's it going, Chuck? I would say that there is a theme, and it's seasonal effectiveness disorder.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, at least for the first two movies.
I mean, I would say it's the sad that is our theme, at least for the first half of December, which is fair. You know, it's fair. It's December. Jason, I think Jason is mouthing away, but can't.
You're muted, Jason.
Muted. I'm muted. Week 3 is sad too. It's.
I think all of them do have an element of sad. It's interesting. I didn't even really set out to do that, honestly, to be completely honest. And that's Jason. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I was picking stuff that like either was wintry in name or setting, not really as a theme, but like that's kind of how I started because I couldn't figure out what the hell I wanted to pick. But yeah, they ended up all being kind of sad movies.
But
the first two titles are legitimately metaphors for
yes
for like what's going on in the movies. Yeah, so
right. Yeah, I mean, but hey, you know, Chuck has promised us that in January it's going to be like a bunch of like circus movies and happy fun clown and elephant stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, but stick around for this month because I think there's a lot of topics in these movies, I think, to be discussed about adulthood, loss of innocence, like all that kind of stuff.
I only have one question about The Ice Storm, and I think it's going to be the primary thing I want to talk about.
Sure. Well, let's introduce the movie, and then I guess you ask your question later, right? If it's the primary thing you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, I'll just go ahead and ask right now, and we can all stew on it. What sort of name is Libbets anyway?
It's a misspelling of Elizabeth, I think.
Boy, this is one of those movies where it's fun to see who pops up.
Holy cow. Oh my God. And some of these movies, or some of the people in, like, especially the younger generation in this movie, if you're our age, don't go looking in the mirror anytime shortly after saying, oh my God, they're in this too. Yeah, look how young they look. And then you look at yourself and you go, oh.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, babies. They're like babies in this. It's crazy.
I know.
The kids definitely are, but the adults, interestingly, are like age appropriate for us, right? They're all in their 40s, I would say, in these movies.
Probably.
So
I mean, certainly in not in The Big Chill. Oops, next week's movie. But in this movie, yes, seemingly they are early 40s.
They should be, they should be late 30s or early 40s.
Yeah.
They should be.
So close enough to us.
But I think you have some outliers with who was cast. Like,
sure, there's
like
some
Sigourney
outliers.
Weaver and Kevin Kline both are cast younger, I think, or supposed to be cast younger.
I meant character age, just to be clear, not actors.
Sure.
But I mean, it gets a little bit like, well, okay, you know, if you want to go like generational, what would the average ages be? I put the whole thing in our group chat about it because I was curious. And it does seem like we have two in each of our two main families that are much older than their spouses.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, even visually looking at them, like
I don't know. I didn't have any issue with how Sigourney Weaver looked in this.
Oh no, but she looks like an older. She looks old to have a 14-year-old first child.
Okay. I guess. Yeah, I guess. But I mean, but it's close enough.
And that would have been less common then than it would be now. Is the other point?
Well, even probably by the end of the 90s, it would have been
right. We are having kids older. They were having kids younger.
Correct. Like they would have been having kids much, much younger. Yes.
Right. Married out of high school, have a kid, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
100%.
But anyway, I mean, that's just something I was curious about. So I did a whole bunch of generational research. So get ready for that.
Nice. So before we get to the research and our deconstruction of the name Libbets, we have a movie from 1997 directed by Ang Lee based on a book by Rick Moody. I was super excited for this movie because of Ang Lee. Like, I don't know what I saw first of his. I guess I probably should have looked at that. But
I definitely saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon first.
Okay, yeah. So
unless I saw this first, maybe I did see this first.
I saw this one.
I didn't know it was Ang Lee, right?
Yeah, that I didn't
when I
know.
saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm kind of confused.
Sense and Sensibility I saw as well, but not in a theater. So I don't know. The first movie I think I saw knowing like, oh, this is Ang Lee, was probably Crouching Tiger, though.
Fair.
Yeah.
I was definitely excited to see this movie. Maybe it was Kevin Kline because I loved that man in the 90s.
I think it's a little strange that you were excited to see this movie as a 21-year-old. I mean, I saw it on video when it came out, but I saw everything on video when it came out. It didn't matter what it was.
I will say that I knew of this movie and specifically was interested in seeing this movie. Now, whether I saw it right when it came out on VHS, I mean, this would have been the time I was working at the video store, which means I probably did watch it like the night before its release or whatever. Like we used to always take home the new releases. Mm-hmm. But like I certainly knew of it because I knew it finished first on Siskel's top 10.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It was very well reviewed.
I was aware of its review.
And I remember it having kind of a cryptic trailer, like the preview for it, where it was like, there's something ominous that's going to happen because they all kind of like turn their heads. And at one point it's this montage of like poignant or like shock or surprise. So the trailer tried to set it up as almost, but not quite a thriller, right?
Yeah, I think that was my read on it too, that it was going to be a thriller. And I liked it the first time I watched it.
I did too.
I think, so I mentioned earlier, and I won't belabor this, that I like rewatching movies that impacted me when I was a kid, but now I haven't seen them in a while, and I'm kind of like, I probably didn't get it, right? Like, there's probably some nuance there that I didn't get. The disappointing thing for me with this movie is there is no nuance there that I didn't get when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe one thing, because there was one thing I was trying to think about too. Like, I was thinking about, it's like, okay, 25 years ago, how would I have approached this movie or the themes in this movie? And I mean, to be honest with you, being closer at that point to the age of like Christina Ricci and Tobey Maguire, and so I would have been far more interested in what they were doing. And I mean, but at the same time, though, 25 years later, to me, I like those characters the most.
Yeah, I was going to say the magic of this movie is that when I saw it when I was 18 or 19 or whatever, I like the kids the best, and I still like the kids the best because I think the movie in most ways is told through their eyes.
Yep, absolutely.
I agree with that. And part of what I saw in this, is that the adults played like what kids think adults are like.
Yes. Yeah, Chuck, you and I had a little conversation on the side about this the day after I think I watched it. And I said that, I really, really like a couple of the things that Tobey Maguire and Elijah Wood say in this. Because it perfectly frames what most people try to fit their life or their relationships, particularly familial relationships, into. And it's never the case. It's never, it's not as simple as they kind of frame it in a sort of way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They use a lot of allegory, and my God, I love how Tobey Maguire does it through Fantastic Four number 141. That's fantastic. No pun intended.
Some early almost sort of foreshadowing of Ang Lee's Hulk with the comic book panels themselves, because he shot Hulk like a comic book in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Now some of that may be more related to James Schamus, because he wrote both of those movies. He wrote almost all of Ang Lee's movies. So it might be him who's actually kind of injecting the comic book style or the, whatever into it. But anyway, you're right though. Yes, there's a heavy focus on those panels in a couple of key points in the movie. But yeah. Anyway,
for sure. So we kind of discussed already, I guess, our original thoughts on this movie. Do you guys have anything else to say about it before we talk about?
What quick follow up, I think, to to what I believe you said, Chuck, where it's the adults act like the children expect them to act. Is that what you said?
Think they would,
or think that they would act? I think that, frankly, most adults act this way. I think that the kids are just observe more than you think they observe, right?
Sure.
And as you get older into your teenage years, it becomes more apparent that your parents they don't know everything, right?
True, and I think that plays that to like the nth degree, because nobody has any wisdom in this movie whatsoever.
Right, and it's the old adage of coming of age is a lifelong process, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like movies like this. I thought a lot about Jennifer Eater's Knives and Skin while watching this, because there's a very, very stark similarities to some of how parents and their kids react and have relationships with one another. That, frankly, is refreshing, because you don't really see that kind of deconstruction in many movies.
Right.
And then taking and putting it into the 1973 time frame is a little bit more difficult to penetrate for me. I think not really. No, we've got the parents who are probably of the silent generation, born in the 30s, most likely, and then their kids being late boomers, right? So it's like that's a weird dynamic to just observe. And I don't know how accurate it is. It seems pretty good, but it's also, we're looking at it now, 25 years later in this movie, 24 years later in this movie. So it is very much the definition of a looking back film. But I just wonder, I don't know much about who the writer, the guy who wrote this, Rick Moody. Was this autobiographical in any way? Was this like his experiences, or?
I'll be honest, I did not do that research.
He was born in 1961, so probably, yeah.
Well, he would have been the character he probably would have been Little Man Tate's.
He would have been 1961. He would have been. Oh yeah, you're right. Yes, he would have been like
around that age, the 12, 13-year-old kid.
Yes, he would have been the youngest kid, Elijah Wood's brother.
Because that would have made sense, because it would make sense, because there is the one line where Elijah Wood says to Christina Ricci how he worships her. Mm-hmm. That is a very, if he is starting puberty at that time with a girl next door who would have been like that makes sense. He would have been framing a lot of his concepts of love and sexuality and all of that around her, which would make sense if he's like 12 or 13 at that point. Yeah. I do want to say, I also think that it's a very, very realistic look at how teenagers, particularly young teenagers, think about sex. And it is not something that is sheltered, or it's not done. It's very in your face, but it's not uncomfortably so. It's
also pretty naturalistic to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is very obviously a part or a point of the, one half of this movie, which is happening to kind of parallel their parents' pursuits. But it's not something that is, what's the word I want to use? Lascivious, maybe?
Sure. I would say, too, it's interesting to me because Christina Ricci's character is very politically mature.
Yeah.
Right? She, understands the Watergate scandal. She understands what's going on. Not Elijah Wood. Well, Elijah Wood, I guess, is mature, too, in a way.
He's in a different headspace, though.
He is.
He's got a whole different thing
cosmic
going on. Yeah.
He's a bit existential, a bit philosophical.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then
he's more interested in the bigger picture.
Yes.
Where Christina Ricci is very embroiled in the here and now.
Yep.
Right? And then you have Tobey Maguire, who's very embroiled in, I need to get the fuck out of here because this family is going to eat me alive.
Yeah, he's trying to escape
the trappings, right?
The collapse or the fly trap, one of the two. Yeah,
right.
Well,
but none of them are sexually mature at all.
No.
Zero. Well, they don't really like. The parents would have been in a situation where they would have gotten together at the end of high school or in college and never had anything else, and therefore, the Joan Allen character would have been thinking this is your life, although she understands that it shouldn't just be her life. Like she's curious about things. She's a kleptomaniac because she wants to feel something. And Kevin Kline has never really sowed his wild oats. But then, when you get like the, it's very, very important how the movie starts with Tobey Maguire talking about what happens to Franklin Richards in that issue of Fantastic Four, because he doesn't want to be lobotomized by the trappings of his family, by the trappings of what's expected, what the family will expect for him to be, which is in a sort of way being lobotomized, just folding into the typical generational system.
Yeah, what's the line? He says, the more power you have, the more damage you can do to each other.
Yep, exactly.
Family is like a black hole that you sink back into whenever you come home.
It's the void you emerge from and the place you return to when you die.
Which is kind of a weird thought, like returning back to that familiar route when you die. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is cool though. The one thing that stands out, and this is also during a time, kind of going back to Christina Ricci, you can tell she's going to be an interesting actress for the rest of her life. This was during a time she was making this. She was in The Opposite of Sex. She was in Pecker.
Was Casper like right after this or right before?
Right before. It was 2 years before. 2 years before that, she was in Casper, and at that point in time, she seemed
different,
bright, and interesting, and like she was not the dour. I mean, like as good as she was as Wednesday Addams, she wasn't shown much. She showed something.
She didn't really play a kid again.
Nope.
After this movie. Not really. I mean, I guess she was. She has that one cameo in Fear and Loathing, which is funny.
Yeah, yeah. But which is funny because Tobey Maguire's in that too, in his cameo at the very beginning, and they're both playing kind of kid-like characters, not prepared to run into who they run into.
Yeah.
But yeah, she, it's like from this point forward, she is a little adult, you know, and and you can see it, even though she looks like a kid, she has moments where she acts like a kid. There's still something there behind her eyes where it's like, this person's with it. You know, it's like you could tell she was going to be a star.
Yeah. And she would have been,
she was like 16, I think, when 16. She did this, 16 or 17.
Yeah. Yeah. That's about, yep. That would be about right. Yeah, she had a good run. She had one of my favorite eras of movies was in that like late 90s. And
oh yeah, her and Natasha Lyonne were just perfect for what they were doing at that time.
I mean, man, she was like not all these movies that I was like watching, like you said, The Opposite of Sex, Buffalo 66.
Oh yeah, that was the other one. Yeah,
Pecker, 200 Cigarettes, like all this shit coming out like in that last 3 years of the 90s, and I saw all of it.
Yep,
every single thing. Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, I was seeing it because of her.
Well, yeah, I was, and I also was just seeing it because it was coming through the video shop.
Sure,
you know.
Yeah, makes it easy when you don't have to seek it out at an arts theater. Yeah,
yeah, or you don't have to make a monetary choice even, right? It's just like I watched everything for free, and that was all stuff that was coming through the shop.
She's been in a lot of movies.
Yeah,
a lot.
And then, I mean, let's talk more about the cast. I think, Tobey Maguire is right on the cusp of something here as well.
Yeah, I mean, he, well, yeah, because like shortly after this is the Cider House Boys.
Cider House Rules.
Rules, that's right.
Yes.
Cider House Boys, isn't that what you drink?
Yes.
Or Cider Boys?
No, Cider Boys.
Cider Boys.
But I was also, what I was also thinking of? I was also thinking of Wonder Boys.
Oh, yes. Great movie.
I like that movie.
Because that came out right around the same time, which that's Katie Holmes.
Yeah. It was a couple years later, but yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying the same time as Cider House Rules.
Right. Yeah, you're right. It was.
But yeah. And of course,
he had a cameo in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas also.
Yep. He also had that little movie called Spider-Man.
Well, that's obviously what made him a star. Yeah. That's what made him an A-lister. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Elijah Wood's about to do Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Very, very close to Lord of the Rings. Yep.
Yeah, so all of these people in 5 years' time are huge stars. All the kids.
Yeah.
Or the three main kids, at least. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so Elijah, what the first one came out in 99? Is that right?
2001.
2001. Okay. So it was a few years, but he did a lot in those 4 years.
Yeah.
I can't find his filmography. Where is it? There it is. Cause he was kind of like the kid and stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
The kid and stuff.
And he was the good son, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. The good son with Macaulay Culkin, right?
Well, we're pretty well known, I think.
Well, you're a little choppy. What's going on? What was that?
I was just going to say he was the kid in a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
And now again, like this is sort of the movie that transitioned him into more adult roles, more edgy roles.
Well, and then shortly after Lord of the Rings, he's in Sin City. Then he started producing stuff. Mm-hmm. He has a really, really creepy role in Sin City.
Yes, he does. Yes.
When did Wikipedia start taking away the straight listing of people's movies? It's weird.
A lot of people, they put them on a separate page.
Yeah. Nowadays,
especially if they've been in a lot.
Yeah. I know you got to find the link. It's annoying.
Yeah. But anyway, no. Yeah. So, I mean, and then of course, Katie Holmes the following year is on like one of the biggest teenage drama soap operas ever.
Yep.
Which launches her right into Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise's lap.
Oh boy. Yeah. And then of course you've got the everyman, every face, Michael Crumpsity.
Oh,
That guy shows up in so many things.
yeah,
No, not Michael Crumpsity. Is that, am I thinking the right person? David Krumholtz. David Krumholtz. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah. He's
Toby's buddy, his roommate. Yeah,
keeps taking
that guy
his
shows
ladies.
up and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Michael Crumpsity.
God, that guy was in Oppenheimer this year.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, but everybody was in Oppenheimer. But he was the only one from this movie that was in Oppenheimer.
This is like near the end of like when Kevin Kline like kind of disappeared, right? Like he and Phoebe Cates like stopped doing shit. It feels like Kevin acted for a while longer, but
Yeah, Kevin was still doing stuff.
I
mean, Kevin was still trying to make like weird, like Wild Wild West came out 2 years after this.
that's strange.
Yeah,
But that feels like a favor.
he was doing the Pink Panther in 2006. I mean, Kevin Kline has always been around.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, he's on TV every Sunday on Bob's Burgers. He's almost in every episode of that now.
He is indeed. But this was kind of the rise of Joan Allen.
Yeah, this is right around the time she was in Nixon. Yeah, because she kind of just appeared out of nowhere, it seemed.
She'd been in a lot of stuff, but kind of smaller roles and things. But I mean, yeah, she became like a legit leading lady coming off of this movie. Well, yeah, you're right. She did Nixon in '95.
The Crucible was
Crucible.
And Nixon was kind enough to do this movie.
Yeah, it was. That is the funniest movie in the scene, or funniest scene in the movie. And
Yes, for sure.
but it also like really disturbed me.
Yes,
yeah,
for sure.
that was yeah, I'm sure that did not sit well with me when I was 20 or 21.
It really
yeah.
bothered me. And then Pleasantville with Toby.
Yeah.
The next year. Interesting. Huh.
That
But,
is
I mean, she ended up, did she win Oscar for?
No, she was nominated
The
for
Contender?
Nixon.
Oh, she was nominated for Nixon.
And she was nominated for she was nominated
For
two or
The
three times,
Contender.
I think.
Yeah.
Or I thought she was nominated for, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, she blew in one day and then blew out.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, she was nominated for Nixon, The Crucible, and The Contender. So in 5 years' time, she had three Oscar nominations.
So coming into this, she would have been, for the adults, for sure, like a pretty big name.
Yeah, I mean, she had a nomination. Klein had a
heavy
win.
hitter. Yeah.
Sigourney Weaver had a couple of nominations at that point.
I mean, it makes sense that all three of their faces are the ones they sell the movie with. Yeah.
Well, ostensibly, the movie follows them a little bit more than the kids, but the kids have the bigger impact because you're seeing what is waiting for their future.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you see kind of what they had to look up to.
Yeah.
Right. It sort of forgives the boomers in a way, and more of in a way I can get behind than the next movie we're going to discuss.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't know. Should we, I guess, talk a little bit about the things that happen?
Sure. Jeff, you're always the best at that.
Nah, I'm not.
We don't have to. We can just bounce around because I enjoy doing that.
I mean, because this is a movie that a lot of things happen, but it's structured in a very kind of dramatic. Wow, it's structured
It's a Thanksgiving movie. It's
where a
told
lot
over
of
Thanksgiving
things.
vacation.
Well, yeah, but it's also like there are some things happening while other things are going on, and it's like it's sequential, but it's a lot of things happening at the exact same time, and it's told sort of with bookending stuff at the end of the story,
Right.
because the movie begins with Toby on the train headed back to Connecticut. The way the guy said that is like it's how I always joke about how that's spelled.
Right.
He says it phonetically.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that's when we see him in the train reading that Fantastic Four issue, which he's probably been holding on to that for a little while because it was that actually came out in the summertime, so or like at the end of summer. So he had been holding on to that issue for a couple of months to read it. I understand.
He waited for a train ride.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just wait to read your stuff until you're kind of captive and you have to do something. Reading is it,
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, and that's when he talks about like, the decision that's put in front of Reed Richards about his son, and that gets him to talking about family. And then it kind of goes back like 2 days, I think, because it's Wednesday before Thanksgiving break. He's at school. That's where we see Katie Holmes as Libbets. By the way, I started looking that up, and it is not a first name that I can find. It's so weird. It's such a weird Libbets Casey. It's almost like it should be Casey Libbets.
And they're just saying it backwards.
Yeah. But anyway, he's got a crush on her. She's talking about like she talks about like the whole concept of like the free will and religion and stuff like that. That
it's too rational to be good, so you have to choose to be evil. It's very existential. Blah, blah,
exactly,
blah, blah, blah.
Which also is kind of maybe setting up some of the choices that some of the characters make.
Right.
And in particular, one character very specifically, and Kevin Kline being, he's a cheat. And we'll get there in just a moment. But Paul is Tobey Maguire's character, and his roommate, Francis, basically anytime Paul likes somebody and starts hanging out with a girl, Francis swoops in and takes her.
Yep.
Which is also kind of funny because that also connects to something next week that is 10 times fucking worse in next week's conversation. But anyway, but yeah, so he already knows that he has basically screwed himself by telling his roommate that he likes this girl, and sure enough, that later comes back to bite him. But he is coming home for Thanksgiving break. And Christina Ricci, his sister, Wendy, which I had to look up to make sure she didn't play Wendy in that Casper movie, because I was like, oh, that would have been weird. But anyway, no, she doesn't. She is, she's watching a whole thing about like the Watergate scandal. She's very, very tuned in on that. You can really get the impression that as she was kind of getting into adolescence, like being politically mindful and feminism and stuff was hitting her real hard.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? I mean, it's like you kind of soak up what's going on around you if you are maturing, and pretty much. Yeah, and so then you have Ben and Elena, which are their parents. That's Kevin Kline and Joan Allen. And Kevin Kline is kind of aloof, and it seems like Elena is like a bored housewife. Like you would expect her to have little helpers if this was the 50s instead of the 70s. You know?
Yeah.
And that is basically the setup for them. The two parents are going to go to a dinner party later that night. Which seems like they're constantly doing shit like that. Like that would not have been the adulthood I want. I guys, I love you, but don't invite me to a dinner party every fucking night.
Yeah, it was like dinner parties and cocktail parties almost every night.
It was Thanksgiving weekend though, right? Like,
I ain't gonna
this might
do
be
it.
a little out of the ordinary.
Maybe, but I ain't gonna do it. So anyway,
it did have the sense of like it was for the holidays.
Yeah, because there is the conversation.
Even Allison Janney at one point when she puts the keys out, she's like, "It's new this year." Right?
Yeah,
like
I mean, well, that's the neighborhood thing that at one point Ben says to Elena. It's like, do you want to do it this year?
Yeah,
and they're kind of like kicking around, like, do they even want to go? But of course they're going to go because this is their humdrum, mundane life at this point.
Well, they might have left, but Jane had an ulterior motive.
Yes. Well, Jane or
I'm bad with names. So Elena, thank you.
Joan
I'll
Allen?
just say whatever name I want and you fix it.
Okay, we'll just figure it out. Yeah.
I think you just smushed Joan and Alan together and made Jane.
Jane.
Or Joan and Elena and drop the A at the end.
There you go.
Yeah. But anyway, so they end up going over to I'm not even sure exactly. Is it the Franklins?
It was. I'm pretty sure dinner was.
It was it was at the Hoods, I think.
No.
No, it was at the Carvers.
It was at the Carvers. You're right. It was at the Carvers, and it was the Hoods, the Carvers, and Dorothy Franklin, and her boyfriend or husband or whatever.
Yeah, whoever that guy was.
Yeah. And because this is where they start talking about the indiscretions of somebody that they know. She's kind of like she's the
gossipy.
She's the gossipy one, right? And you get right out of the gate, like Joan Allen Elena is a little bit excited by this story. Like she's like she's like, oh, what this person do? What's, you can kind of get from her that it's like she wants something more out of life. She doesn't, it's like not everything has to be so prim and fucking proper all the time. Ben seems to squirm a little bit, I feel like. And the most important character in this scene is Janie Carver, which is Sigourney Weaver. And she seems almost uppity about it. Almost bitchy. Not uppity, but like, oh, how quaint that this person was, like having an affair with somebody.
I mean, it's her experience too, so it's not exciting to her.
Exactly. Like she's almost bored by every single fucking person. In fact, she flat out tells Ben at one point, "You're boring me."
Yeah.
That cracked me up.
I have a husband. I don't have a particular need for another too.
Exactly. It's like, what the fuck are you doing, Ben? You're bitching to your mistress about, something that she hears from her husband all the time.
He's just constantly babbling.
He is
his problem. He's always talking.
Yeah, I'm glad I never have that problem.
No, you're always quiet. Jason, were you going to say something there?
What? No, I'm sorry. I'm having issues.
He is the anti-Ben.
You guys keep cutting in and out for me, so I'm trying to figure out my situation.
Well, that might be why you were cutting out for us. So
yeah,
figure that out. Anyway, so basically, you kind of get the impression from everybody, in this scene, like who they are and what they are and how they react to these certain things and what that means about them later.
Right. I would say there's a lot of ennui to everything that they're talking about and doing. Like even the kids, like there's Jason will probably mention this when he gets fixed up, but the ice storm, right? They're all frozen emotionally, right? Like there's nothing to them. Like even when something major happens, there's barely a reaction to it. It's weird.
They're frozen emotionally, but they're also like frozen off from each other. All the molecules in the air have frozen and separated.
Yep.
Right?
Well, yeah, because like
there is no commingling of molecules anymore.
Who says that? Because they're also talking about eating farts.
That was Elijah Wood.
That was Elijah Wood. Yeah, I loved everything that came out of Elijah Wood's mouth in this movie.
I never actually forgot that. I forgot where it came from, but I never forgot that little speech he gave. Yeah,
my oldest child always covers their face whenever someone farts and is like, I wish so hard they were watching this movie with me so I could be like, look, it's you.
Just find that scene, and I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. No, it's so they are, because like there's a moment in which Elijah Wood and Christina Ricci are messing around with her in the Nixon mask.
Yeah.
And found by Kevin Kline, not in their home. Nobody ever asks, "Hey, Mr. Hood, why are you here?"
Well, his wife does.
Well, sure, of
You
course.
there.
Well, sure, but like nobody at that, not on the scene, right?
Right.
And like Wendy, like one, he acts surprised that she's kind of playing these games. It's like, don't you even understand? Like, and then he carries her home like she's a kid. Like, you do not understand that this person is like 14 years old or whatever. It's like you're beyond this point of carrying her home like a 6-year-old.
I think,
and it's like it is that kind of, they're separated from, like just not really understanding what's going on in anybody else's life.
There's a lot of sweetness in that scene, though, and
there
a lot of that blurring of the lines between his little girl and a young woman.
Sure, but I mean,
right. It represents him not. It's not that he's disassociated from it or doesn't understand it. It's more that he doesn't want her to grow up.
Right.
Well, I would say though,
he even tells her he's not all that mad at her.
Well, no, but
I just think you don't want to make a mistake that you regret, and he doesn't like the kid.
Right.
But also though, when he tries to
he's being a dad. He's being a dad. Isn't that scene?
but he utterly fails in trying to have any kind of serious conversation about pretty much the same thing with his son, which should be easier because he's older.
I agree.
So there is a little bit of separation there. I think that he is not. I
disagree with that. I just
think he's aloof in general.
Well, he is aloof in general, but
I think he's the best parent in the movie, though.
He's also
by a lot.
There's a difference between being forced into a subject and broaching a subject with your children. Like, if your child does something that you need to talk to them about, like, it just comes out of you.
Sure.
If you're thinking about it, like, I could tell you from experience. Sorry.
Well, no. I mean, in any interpersonal relationship, it's when you have to confront something, it's easier to confront it at the moment that it's happening, as opposed to having to build up to the confrontation.
And he probably is the best parent in the movie, which says a lot about the parents in this movie too. But
I'm not saying it's a high bar.
I know.
No, he just steps over the bar. He doesn't.
But
doesn't have to leap.
I think his intentions are the best too out of a lot of these people. But he's not. He makes a lot of mistakes.
Yes, and
he's very human in that regard.
Yeah,
and selfish. He's
sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is.
But him not being able to talk up to his 16-year-old son, which is already like Tobey Maguire is like, look, I'm 16, Dad. Why didn't we have this conversation 5 years ago?
When he's talking about jerking off in the shower, that's hilarious.
It's funny as shit.
I mean, he's like basically bridges right into just practical advice.
It's like because we expect you to do it there.
Don't be
anyway.
gross. Just don't be gross. But it illustrates that he's uncomfortable talking about any of these things because he's not having these conversations with his wife, right?
Right.
So how is he supposed to, have these conversations with his kids in a way that will actually help them grow and understand and make the right choices when he's uncomfortable talking about it with his own wife, right?
And he doesn't know how to make the right choices.
Right. And he doesn't. Maybe if he could, though, talk to her, he wouldn't make the choices that he makes. He makes the choices that he makes out of fear of that confrontation or out of fear of being rejected or a lot of he's scared. And he's, in a lot of ways, just as sexually broken as his wife.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's frozen him out of that part of his life. Like, she tries to kiss him, and all she says is his name.
Yeah.
And, like, shoves him off, basically, with a word. Right. So I wouldn't blame her for this, because we don't know why she is this way.
Right, and that's one of my critiques with this movie, is it doesn't go deep enough with some of the characters, her especially.
Right.
But yeah, go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say, is that, that's where the nuance I was hoping to get this time in watching it that I did not get. Yeah. Is there more character reason for these things, or is it just all surface level? And it is kind of all surface level for the most part.
It's a little bit like brushstrokes of what you'd expect from adults who are raised by, who were born in the 30s, right?
Sure.
Who were raised in families of the perfect picturesque 50s, right? But those 50s turned to the 70s, it turned to war, it turned to assassinations, and yeah, it was a slow disintegration of that supposed picturesque life, but also a life that was very cold and very emotionally stunted. It was all like generationally, this is how you behave. Nothing evolved, right?
And my ass was born at the tail end of that.
Your emotions, the way you encounter the world, you're kind of on your own, right? You didn't really have role models in earlier generations to help steer you through that, and maybe that's true of life in general. I don't know, but I think it was definitely those generations into the millennials that had it the worst.
Interesting take. I cannot disagree.
I don't know about. I'm not around like many parents anymore. I don't know. The movies that are looking back are probably going to start happening soon. So usually it's culturally, you can get a good sense from the types of movies that are made, but and what type of disaffection there is. But I think it's there. I don't think it's a novel thing, and it will probably always be there. And it's kind of a sad sort of, vicious cycle, I guess, of emotional malaise.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that it's like, it kind of comes across like, I know people who were raised in households that there was almost no, there was almost no affection shown to the kids, or, like it's parents that's just not, no, we're going to tell you what to do and not to do. And then, and I've seen how that passes on to the next generation as well. Some people work very hard not to be that way. Others just slip. That's how I was raised, and I came out fine. You're not fine.
Right.
And they, right. But one of the things that I think are, like our age group, the late millennials and the early millennials and the late Gen Xers were right around the time where both parents started to have to work. There was a lot of divorce. There was more that was more accepted. There were, so there was a lot of latchkey kids. There's a lot of stuff like that, and separation would start to kind of form more so from just not being around each other, like maybe our parents were around their parents. Now, sometimes, like I said, sometimes those parents weren't the greatest of parents to always be around because there wasn't a whole lot of affection or whatever. But for the last 40 years, both parents have had to be at work most of the time, at least for most people. And it's, that's going to create its own whole other scenarios. It's going to create whole other walls that get put up in between people. A lot of people will start looking for other people to raise their kids when it's like, no, it's real simple. I was raised really, really well, and I didn't have to be raised by, I watched a lot of TV. I went to a lot of movies. I had friends to hang out with or whatever, but I still got parented very well, so it's like, I can say that I don't necessarily have those walls in my family, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot of other families that aren't like mine, if that makes sense, and so there are those kind of natural degradations. Now, different financial situations, different generations, different, ways that people are raised by their parents, then they pass it down to their kids. Those all change some things, but yeah, this is a period of time where mothers were oftentimes silent and fathers were oftentimes aloof or not expected to be, the actual parent of the two. I don't know if any of that made sense, but
it makes sense. It's not my experience. Like my parents were around for us. Like,
sure. Oh, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, no, I think the three of us oftentimes had our parents around, but I mean, like, there were certainly times
my
where
parents
like,
around didn't make them good parents.
okay, but like for me, it's like, yeah, I mean, like both my mom and dad had to work, so there were plenty of times where it's like I'm just hanging out with my brothers, but I still got parented. It's not like, like a lot of people today will try to say it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, we could go on and on about this, but like, some people will try to say, oh, I don't want my kids learning from this teacher or from that program or from those movies. And it's like, yeah, but have you ever thought about just fucking parenting? Yeah, but I don't know.
You don't know. Yeah. So back to the movie. I don't know where we left off. Where did we leave off, Jeff?
Yeah. So basically, yeah. Once Thanksgiving comes, I guess the movie technically started on Tuesday because I think it's Wednesday when Paul comes home, because he originally wanted to come home on Thanksgiving, and the parents were like, no, you can't come home on Thanksgiving. You got to come home before Thanksgiving. So on Wednesday, he comes home. You see there's a scene with him and Wendy, and he basically flat out asks, it's like, are you, do you think mom and dad are headed for the
dustbin of history?
The dustbin of history. That's exactly what he says. I have an interesting take on that, but we'll come back around to that at the end. But and Wendy is kind of confirming his fears, where it's like, yeah, it's not great between the two of them. It's there's all sorts of issues that you're not a part of. And he then finds out that she's been messing with those Jim Croce albums because it's now skipping.
Yeah.
And that kind of squashes that. And I don't think it's a conversation that either one of them really wanted to get into anyway.
Oh, no. He's clearly trying to change the subject, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. But skipping Jim Croce will end that topic very quickly because, yeah, what the fuck you do to my Jim Croce?
It'll turn someone into Leroy Brown if you touch my records.
I was also confused for a while that he was still in high school until they had a conversation in the car and he said he was 16.
Yeah, he's at a boarding school.
This is just high school.
Yeah.
I thought he was away at college, personally.
Yeah, it makes sense, but then I kind of realized that it's like, no, I think this is like a boarding school or like a private school situation.
Yeah, definitely is. I just didn't realize that until he said his age.
Yeah.
This is high school.
This is also like when you get into you get into a couple of really good lines here, and maybe we wait until Chuck comes back. But shortly after that, that's when Wendy, just being curious about sex and curious about people being curious about her, she gets caught, kind of showing, or like her and the younger brother. Which one? That's not Mikey. What was his name? Mikey was Elijah Wood. Sandy.
Yeah,
Sandy. She and Sandy are in the bathroom together, and Sigourney Weaver catches them. And this is pretty much the one time that Sigourney Weaver is shown actually attempting any kind of. Well, no, that's not true because Sandy's also blowing up shit.
Yeah,
outside.
But she's just like, play with the whip instead.
Right. It's like, is the whip full of explosives? Play with that instead.
Play with that instead. I fully expected that whip to make an appearance in a bedroom later, but I was disappointed, very disappointed.
Disappointed.
I mean, I could see her like using that on Kevin Kline and be like, "Damn, Sigourney."
Yeah, absolutely. Damn. Like maybe that's where you got it from. But no, but he does start whipping the shit out of that like flower pot.
Yeah, the rose bush, I think. Yeah,
or whatever it was. He's whipping the shit out of that.
But yeah, she says something to Wendy.
Yes, it's they used to send adolescents off into the woods, and they don't come back until they've learned a thing or two.
Yeah,
which is awful advice.
She's also trying to make a point that her impulses will betray her if she gives in to them.
I mean, I guess she would know because she certainly is betrayed by her impulses at the end of this movie, at least in some way.
Yeah.
But her, it is not a great line because essentially it's saying that she is doing the thing that Sigourney Weaver thinks she's saying she shouldn't do. It's like, if she's saying, no, you don't get to just go around and show your bits off to everybody. You go off into the wilderness and don't come back until you've learned a thing or two. Isn't that the same thing as what she is just doing? Kind of out in the wilderness on her own, kind of doing this? You see what I'm saying? I
see what you're saying. She doesn't have any direction, but yeah.
She's essentially saying that these types of things.
It'd be better just.
Go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, she would be better off like actually parenting, or having her parents parent the child, like having an actual conversation about what's going on and confronting it rather than just I don't know, blowing it off. Really, she just kind of says, she just gives her like a couple like cryptic lines and shoves her out of the house.
That isn't gonna solve what was going on.
I didn't take it as her telling her that's what she should do. I took it as a threat.
Well,
like, this is what we do to little girls like you who do dumb shit. We send you out into the woods until you learn a thing or two.
Well, there is there is a part of that, but it's like she's essentially saying that in the old days, parents used to send their kids off to learn on their own, which is exactly what is going on here. So it's like I don't think she's making a veiled threat. I think she's just saying it's like, we have different ways of parenting now, and this is to do what we say, not just go off and learn for yourself. But by the way, you should go off and learn stuff. It's the way she says it comes off as jumbled in the meaning.
Yeah, I mean, none of the adults give good advice in this movie.
No, but it is shown later that, she is walking. I mean, there is a woods in between their two houses, and that's where Kevin Kline, when she catches her later messing around with Mikey, is carrying her home.
Yeah.
It's like, there is a little bit of some sort of a parallel there.
I think it's how do I put this? It's kind of like parenting in the extremes, right? Like there's no middle ground.
Yeah.
It's you're figuring it out, all of it out on your own, but I also want you to stay my little girl and you're my baby forever, and I'm gonna, always coddle you, right? So it's like coddling without any consequence. There's no real teaching. It's just figure it out, but I'm always here for you. But there's no actual guidance, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like your job should be to prepare your kids to not have you around anymore, in a sense. And there's none of that happening here.
No.
I would say, and certainly the other thing that's going on when you look at how Ben and Elena treat Paul. Oh, let the boy have his fun tonight. Let him stay out until 11 and take the 11:30 train home instead of the 9:30 train, or like let him go out and find his thing in the wilderness. They are basically, but that was also very common. It's like girls are meant to remain chaste while boys will be boys,
Sure.
So Chuck, there was a couple of things I wanted to bring up here. We're kind of in the place where some really, really good lines and some really good allegories are kind of put into the story here. And I wanted to wait until you got back to talk about this. But at one point, Mikey is telling Sandy about, the perfect space, but only in your mind, because you can't draw a perfect square in the material world but in your mind, you can draw a perfect square and have a perfect circle or a perfect whatever. And I really like that because it's like, in a way, that's the way the kids are trying to think of what their adult life is going to be, or what their parents are like, or what they're, it's in the material world, it's not going to be perfect. But in your head, you kind of know it's like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'll do that and they'll be like this. And it's kind of an interesting way that they're trying to look ahead at their own maturity.
It's wise beyond his years because he recognizes that the perfect life that he envisions for himself is never going to be the thing, but it can always, but that vision can always be aspired to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's why he's a little philosopher of this.
Yeah, movie. Your goals can be perfect, but they're not attainable. Right, they're not completely attainable.
Right,
there's some semblance of it out there.
Yeah,
but it's never going to be what you envision in your mind.
It's always going to be a little adjustment here, a little bit of adjustment there. And that is one thing that I think...
And that's in a perfect world,
Right.
Just little adjustments is in a perfect world. Yeah.
Right. And I think that also speaks to a certain extent where the parents are too, right? It's like the parents are they're almost like, for Ben, why wouldn't he think that he has a pretty sweet life? He's got a wife to come home to. He's not lonely at home. He's got two, for the most part, pretty smart and good kids. And then he's got the neighbor on the side that he can get sex from, but in his head, that might seem a little bit better than good. But in the real world, that's not good. It's not. It's just it's unattainable, or it's untenable to continue that way.
Yeah, I don't feel like he gives it much thought. Like it's like we talked about the frozen particles and what have you. Like there is zero emotion to what he goes through day to day.
True.
Like unless he's carrying his little girl home, which is the only time that you see like kind of a pure moment with anyone.
Yeah.
Besides the children being children with each other, like their sexual awakening, I guess, is pure. But with an adult, like none of it is. It's like really sad what they're going through.
Yeah, it's that's also really, really well visually conceived when they get to the key party, because everybody is into the idea until it's time, and then they all look fucking terrified. It's like it's all great until it actually starts to happen.
It's like it looks like a grade school dance.
It does. Yeah, it's so weird.
Sadie Hawkins dance.
Hawkins dance. Yeah.
Yep. But anyway, there's also the line that we've already kind of talked about, where Paul talks about like how family is like your own antimatter, where it's like matter and antimatter can't exist in the same place. So it's like there's always going to be friction between your life and your family, which makes sense, which is why sometimes people get shut things off like that to people in their family, and certainly would explain some stuff here. He also later talks about the negative zone in that Fantastic Four issue, where it's like it's opposite to regular life. So some go deeper and go all the way into the negative zone, like how and Paul basically is talking about how people need to expand their horizons, usually through destructive means. So like Ben's cheating, Elena's shoplifting.
Yep.
Paul always tells his roommate about the girls he likes and then misses out on them. Both Janie and Wendy are kind of similar in the sense that they are wielding their sexual power in kind of reckless ways, but from two different perspectives of that. Whereas like Janie is just cheating on her husband and her family. Wendy is just trying to figure out what she can do now, basically. A little bit reckless in both regards, but one is certainly more honest than the other.
For sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, Wendy to me is just like
She's just doing what a 14-year-old girl will do, or whatever.
It all feels just so normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
But
generationally normal.
But it is that reckless youth kind of way, though, right? Like it's.
But she's also like responsible about it.
Yeah. I mean, she goes to the pharmacy.
Yeah, but she also is like, I'll take, what did she say? I'll take my top off, but not my pants.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's like, she's setting limits.
Sure.
To it. She's actually like being responsible.
And on the opposite end of that spectrum, like, yeah, Janie also sets limits, but it's still, what she's doing is so much worse. It's,
Janie's limits are like, we can have sex.
Don't talk to me.
Right? We can have sex, nothing else. I don't want to know about your day to day. I don't care what your golf game feels like. Like,
this certainly isn't.
I already get enough of that from Jim.
Yeah,
right? Like, come on. And where the fuck is Jim in this whole movie?
Like, he's got to pay. Any of this excites me.
Yeah.
Jim is fucking messing around with semiconductors and silicone.
Yeah. He's off paying for their really weirdly boxy but kind of awesome house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's about to make them billionaires.
Yeah. But so yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
But were they coding him as homosexual at all? Were you picking up on any of that?
Not really. I just was kind of picking up that he's never been particular. If anything, he's maybe asexual in a sort of way, because he's just he's not good at sex and doesn't really seem to care that much about sex.
Yeah.
Which probably for somebody like Janie, that's not going to be enough, and so she is going to seek other,
but
she's almost over-sexualized.
But that would be a way, like, maybe not as late as 1997, but thereabouts, that you would code a character as homosexual, where you didn't want to outright write a homosexual character, especially like coming out of the Hays Code of the 50s. That happened a lot. Right. Sure. So I was just wondering if there was any kind of coding there.
There's probably a question about coding in the next movie too.
Oh, most definitely in that movie. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I didn't really pick up that much on that character.
There's just not enough there. I agree. Yeah. There's not enough there.
But again,
that's kind of like my little complaints with this movie, is that they didn't really go deep enough with some of the characters.
Neither did Jim.
Some of the characters that were really important. But what was your joke? Deeper?
Neither Jim didn't go deep enough either.
No, Jim didn't. I don't even know if he got it in.
Jim lost
which is probably
control.
For the best. That's probably for the best. Yeah.
Jim lost it the moment he unzipped his pants. It was over.
That was awful. I'm sorry, that was awful. Poor Jim.
Yeah, well.
It's the only time I've ever felt sympathy for Randall Flagg.
Yeah, no shit. So we talked about, like, in reality, we've talked about most of the themes of this movie, right?
I think so.
We can kind of wrap up, unless you have something else, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, the couple of things that go, that happen here, it's like, while they're at that party during the ice storm, Tobey Maguire goes over to Katie Holmes' Libet's apartment in like New York, and it's this like really nice apartment and everything. And of course his roommate is there. He's already, kind of swooped in. And there's, like the whole thing where she like basically tells him that, oh, you're like a brother. And he's actually, I mean, that could have gotten a lot darker when she passed.
Oh, he's presented with an opportunity to do the wrong thing,
and he leaves. Yeah,
I didn't remember that scene, and I was not sure where it was going to go, and I was very, very pleased.
Yes,
yeah, because he's like, you know what? I'm just, it's like, no, this isn't gonna fly. So he, and like, that's when he has to rush back home, but then the ice storm starts and he ends up getting stuck on the tracks for several hours. And
why does he get stuck on the tracks?
Because of the literal ice storm.
And the power goes out.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. It's like happening at the same time, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like those trains, if they're not running, they don't keep the power on very long.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might be like a build-up, like battery-like thing that it pulls in electricity, so when it stops, it has lights, but if it stops on the tracks randomly, it will lose its... I don't know. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah,
I do really like it when Toby says, Francis, tonight you sleep the sleep of the just. That cracked me up.
Also, when that was that's when the key party is going on, which then also kind of traps some people there at Alice and Janie's house.
Yeah.
Yep.
She just kind of shows up in the third act of this movie, and it's like, oh, look, it's Alice and Janie.
Is her husband Henry Czerny?
They don't show her as having a husband.
I wasn't sure if he was Henry Czerny, the guy from Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see.
The guy who said, so and so brought her son. Wish some of them would bring their daughters.
Yes.
Like,
oh God.
No, Alice and Janie. They don't have anybody listed as her
husband.
So she may have just been a single,
or he just wasn't. He just probably wasn't on screen.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, but yeah. So she's the one who's like, this is after there's been a big blow up because Joan Allen knows that Kevin Kline's been sleeping with Sigourney Weaver, and he's an idiot about explaining how he found Wendy at the Carvers. I wouldn't have said that if he just lets that slip like it's nothing. And it's like, well, what are you doing there? Oh, I'm taking back the mustache mug.
Okay. I know it's
so
very
it's almost like he wanted to fuck up there,
I think it's worse than that. I think it's that's how little he thinks of his wife's intelligence.
Sure. That she's not going to.
She won't suspect. She can't suspect, and this excuse is good enough for her tiny brain. I do. I really do believe that. That's what he thinks without outright saying words I said in his brain. That's what he thinks of her.
Yeah.
Kevin Kline would never think that way.
Never.
Disappointed.
He's like, he's kind of weirdly on the other side of it in the next movie.
So then, so basically, when they get there after this huge fight, they get to this party and it's like, oh, it's a fucking key party. And he's like, let's go outside and talk about it. And she's like, yeah, we forgot something out in the car. And then it's like, do you want to leave? And she's like, fuck no, we're going to do it. And like Joan Allen's like just tosses his keys in.
Yeah, she takes the keys and
tosses them into the bowl. And it's like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And then...
And he has copped to it by now as well.
Yes, he has. I mean, this is as bad as it could possibly get for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, so it's like then the party takes place. Well, Sigourney Weaver ends up going off with the young guy, right?
Yes.
With the son.
Yeah, the guy from Glenn Fitzgerald from Series 7, The Contenders.
Oh, dang.
I was like, that's the guy from Series 7, The Contenders.
Nice.
So then, and like Kevin Kline makes a drunken ass of himself about it, because he's also been scorned by the fact that he went over to have sex the day that he caught Wendy with Mikey. He was over there to have sex with Janie Carver, and Janie's like, oh, I need to go do a thing, and she just leaves. And he's like drinking. He's like, what is it that he's doing? Something like in his underwear in the living room.
I don't remember
this.
There was something that he was doing when she left, And then he ends up like back in the bed, just like drinking vodka.
Oh,
wait, you moved us back in the movie.
Yeah, you moved us backward.
No. Well, I'm trying to set up the fact why he additionally makes an ass of himself at the party is because he's already pissed at her.
Right. He confronts her about her.
Right.
leaving.
And then he gets drunk, and then she goes off with the younger guy, and he tries to stop it because now he's jealous.
Right.
And it all stems from that when he gets left by her.
Yes.
Right. Because she's had enough of this shit.
Yeah. He's stay here. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a fucking, anyway. He's kind of a loser at this point. She doesn't want to fuck him anymore. But she goes off with the guy, and he ends up in the bathroom for a little bit. This leaves the only key that's left is the hood's key. Mm-hmm. And the only two people left are Joan Allen and Jim Carver.
Yeah.
And he's like, so yeah, you want are we going to do this thing or what? And that's when they go out to the car and he prematurely finishes.
It's a lot sweeter than that. It's actually kind of nice.
I mean, these are the crapped upon, right?
Maybe we don't really know the full story with Jim, but you kind of get that impression.
Yeah, like he seems like a fairly decent guy.
They're the two that are being cheated on. So
exactly. So you got to kind of almost side with them, in a way,
right? From
what we have, the empirical evidence that we have here.
Right.
And so they're basically like, okay, well, we're gonna do this thing, and and when it fails, he's like, I'll take you home. And she goes in and tells Ben, it's like, I've got to ride home. But the ice storm fucks everything up, and they go back. Meanwhile, Mikey Carver and Wendy are going to get together, and Mikey starts heading out towards, at one point they start heading towards each other's house. But Mikey mostly is just kind of taking in the winter wonderland. He's like skipping through
he tells her to meet her somewhere and leaves, and she decides to go see Sandy instead.
Okay. Yes, okay. And and he just starts kind of frolicking in the winter wonderland, and he gets, he's like practically like luging down the road.
Oh my god, it's like that scene in I always use this example. It's it's not the most poignant example for this movie, but I always use this example. It's like that scene in Hot Tub Time Machine where you know that Crispin Glover has one arm in the future, but he has both arms in the past. And at some point in this movie, you're going to learn how he loses his arm. It's like that. It's like, that Elijah Wood's going to bite it. He's like flirting with disaster here. And it's just like, it's too much for me. This is where the movie kind of just is just a little bit trying to be a little bit too in love with itself. Because he's like bouncing on the diving board with his slipping all over the place, and you're like, no, he's gonna die. It's gonna be something else. It's not this. It's not when he's sliding down the street, on the ice. Something's gonna get him.
Jason,
it's cartoonish.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. I've got a question for you, Jason. You asked if we thought Jim Carver was coded as possibly being gay.
Yeah.
Do you think Mikey is being coded as being like autistic?
I don't think he's being coded, but no, I don't know.
Because he's never really all that well connected with anybody else.
But
he is the weird kid, but for 1997 seems a little too not the era for that.
Well, I mean, they're not going to play him off like Rain Man.
No, that's true.
I mean, that was coding for autistic at that point.
It's interesting. Like Rain Man. Is that like your big question? Because it is interesting.
Well, that is a question about it. That is a question that I have, because it's like that was something I was picking up on earlier, and
he's constantly referred to by Ben as the weird Mikey, Yeah, he does the weird speech in class, which is like, about basically eating shit.
Yeah,
but he's not telling it in a way that is cheeky, where he's trying to get a laugh, right?
No, he's just being straightforward. You're eating shit,
Yeah.
When he's playing football, he turns around for the pass and it just does not react to it.
Yeah, but there's
a lot of social cues.
That one was a little different, though. That one was a little different because I got the impression that scene that he would normally make that catch, right? Because his buddy or whoever just like the little like, are you smoking?
Yeah, like are you? Yeah,
and I think he was more distracted by Wendy than anything.
Could be, sure, but there are a lot of like
I'm picking up
social cues.
I'm picking up what you're saying though, and I see it. Yeah, I'm not sure what side of the fence I fall on there.
Well, I know what happens on the side of the fence that he's leaning on.
Oh, what the guardrail? The side of the guardrail?
Right. Yeah. It's not better with fence. But anyway, yes, the guardrail, he leans up against the guardrail because he's just enamored by this ice storm. And of course, what does ice storms do? They make trees brittle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on top of that, it also makes power lines
brittle.
And so
but adds weight, to trees. Trees fall on power lines. Yeah.
Yep.
And then bada boom, bada bing.
He is electrocuted and slides down the road. And later, like basically the next, like very, very early morning, Kevin Kline sobers up and is driving home, and he spots him. And he realizes that he's dead, and he takes him back to the Carvers. Janie, who had come home in the middle of the night, did not even know that Wendy was there in bed with Sandy, not really being. I mean, they're lying naked in bed, but they're not really doing anything. But
right,
they are drunk. They are loaded on the vodka.
They have a drink of vodka. Yeah, that would probably be the one more concerning thing.
Well, you would say that they have a drink, but Wendy poured Sandy like 5 drinks into one.
I know. She was glass. Like, have one more shot. And he already had like 3 in his glass.
Yeah.
She pours more in.
but they're asleep in the and then Janie came home basically balled up and is kind of in her own little world over disappointment of what's going on. And then the only person, I mean, like, Ben brings home Mikey, to which Jim obviously reacts to. Janie never shows up. She stays in bed.
Yeah, she's stirring from sleep, I think. But we don't see the aftermath with her.
Everybody else,
their story is over.
Yeah,
I do, and again, like, best character in the movie, like, approaches Sandy and gives him a hug. It's like, it's really nice.
She shows it's more empathy than anybody else has.
Exactly, and it's like the least that she can do, and no one else even thinks to do it. Right? Yeah.
And then the movie ends with basically finally the train that we saw at the beginning with Tobey Maguire arrives in New Canaan. And he gets off to see, my whole family's here. That's neat. But no, there's bad news. Bad things have happened. And that's when you see crying Kevin Kline for the first time this month. Not the last time this month. Which
is important. It's extremely important that he cries there.
Yes.
I specifically wanted to get to this point. So, yes, let's talk about that. Go right ahead, Chuck.
Well, you would specifically wanted to get to it. You can say it. Go ahead. I know you're excited.
No. Go ahead. No, I mean,
I just think he's releasing emotion. He's in a way he's woken up to what has been going on around him.
He's thawed a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but normally that's like a thing I do too.
I know it is. That's your thing.
Yeah, I know that's your thing. But maybe this movie's a little too serious. We can't do that.
He's not even crying over the loss of Mikey either. He's crying about the lost years with his children, I think, in all of that and what it could mean if he lost them. So it's important. Like, kind of a mildly, well, how did you put it, Jason? Because you put it well. Like, it's almost a hopeful, nice ending in a.
Yeah, it's a happy ending in its melancholy.
Yes.
It is, because you get the sense that.
Oh, I think Jason froze. Unless
is
it's me.
The first step in. Sorry, my internet's all messed up. Is the first step in this family healing itself. Is the feeling you get. At least that's the feeling that I got.
Yes.
I actually have a different read.
Oh, interesting.
I think the Carvers are going to heal, and I think the Hoods are done.
Ooh.
Because if the last shot goes from Paul to Ben, Paul is the one who kind of, I mean, like, of the Hoods, Paul seems like the one who is most likely going to be more compassionate and more, I mean, like, even though, yes, Wendy does give the hug, does give the one sign of, but like, Paul seems like the one who's going to be the best adjusted, even with the family dynamic the way it is. But because the last shot is actually on Ben, I think my read is Ben and Elena get a divorce, but that may make them both better parents. I think that's
not the end of the Hoods, though.
Well, no, but I mean, but it's the end of the traditional family unit that they had been, or that they were putting on the show of.
I think what we're saying is not mutually exclusive.
Sure.
Because I grew up in a family, and I'm not afraid to say this, I grew up in a family where I do believe I would have had a happier childhood had my parents separated, right? I think families can heal in different ways. And I think probably those two do need to go their separate ways. But they could probably be better parents and better friends and do better and do right by their children in that scenario. So when I say they're healing, I don't necessarily say the nuclear family is healing, but these characters, this family, these people, this unit is going to heal.
The individuals are going to heal, and I think that the Carvers are actually going to stick it out, because I think it's going to be a reversal of the typical, like, when a kid passes away, usually the parents split.
My question is,
I don't know.
I don't know about enough
the Carvers.
About them. Yeah, there's not enough there about that. But I got the impression that last shot of Ben is this is the end of one thing, and we've got to fix it moving forward.
Yeah,
because he's realizing everything.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think we agree on that for sure. Yep.
And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong. And maybe Ben and Elena are better off as separated, but I mean, Elena, anytime she wants, she's got a weirdo priest waiting for her.
Probably. I wouldn't even talk about that guy.
Yeah, that guy is so fucking weird, man.
So weird. That is a very strange, way to give Elena, character moments.
Yeah.
I don't know. That stuff didn't really work for me.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of think of her as, in a way, while it's not exactly deep, she's the silent woman in the house, right? Which would have been kind of common back then at their age. That she would
most definitely. Yeah.
Like I said, if it was 20 years earlier, she would have had little helpers.
Yeah.
So it's like,
why does that make her more susceptible to long-haired freaky priests, though?
Well, no, I don't know. Well, because she's.
I'm just saying it's a bit of a stereotype.
Well, sure, but I mean, it's.
They don't give her a lot of range.
Yeah.
And, but I do think that how she confronts Klein is pretty strong.
Yes.
You really do see her.
So I'm not as stupid as you think I am.
Right. You really do see her emerge.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, really, the last act really is where a lot of other characters are kind of having their arc complete. Hers just begins.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so we don't really know where. True. I mean, maybe there's a sequel out there waiting for us. Let's make a sequel.
I could see another novel, not another movie.
I Storm 2. It happened again.
It happened again.
I don't know. I think this is a very good movie, and it isn't. It's kind of one of those movies it's a lot of tough stuff in it.
Yeah.
But it is not a tough movie to watch. I enjoyed actually watching the movie.
Yeah, I did too. There's a lot of really. It's densely. The production is very dense in how 1973 it is.
Yeah.
So those are kind of fun things to pick up on. And there's a lot of sort of sardonic humor in it. That's pretty entertaining too. Yeah. It is one watch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck,
I like the scene where they're watching the talk show. I think it's Elijah Wood and Christina Ricci, and it's about might not be this scene, but the prominent scene is a woman defending her right to use birth control in her marriage.
Yeah. Was it a divorce court show?
It might have been. Yeah.
Because then they say, well, they'll end up on divorce court someday or something.
It was
something was said about that.
It felt like one of those like Donahue type shows, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I thought it specifically had something to do with divorce court because a mention was made about that about one of their parents.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, no, they'll end up on divorce court if they talk about it like that.
It could have been, yeah, because she was.
I love how like intently they're watching that too. It's like they are engrossed in
all of their junk food.
Yeah, which is, I mean, again, that's very so kind of realistic. Yeah,
totally is. It's like it's again that bridge between being a kid and being a young adult. You're not watching cartoons eating junk food. You're watching Divorce Court.
And
Ricky Lake.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, right. Totally. In like senior year of high school, like. Oh yeah, Ricky Lake's on. You know, I went to school with somebody who he and his sister went on Ricky Lake, and it was so fucking funny.
Well, you're gonna have to send that video someday if you can find it.
Oh boy,
yeah, it was really funny because like it was all about like how the guy who was in my class, his younger sister, took on because basically she wanted to tell him that he was like a big nerd, even though he like always dressed really nice and everything. And she was like, you've got no, you know, basically it's like, you're not the player you think you are. And it's like, no, he's not. I know him. He is not.
Right. That's funny.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway. All right. So anything else here? I will say I do think this is a very good movie. And I would.
Yeah, I give it A-.
Interesting. So that means you didn't like The Big Chill at all.
No, well, we'll talk about that next week. Because I already have a preview of what happened there.
Oh, I didn't like it very much. No.
Well, so what are we talking about next week then?
The Big Chill.
That's exactly right. That is on Wednesday, December 13th on filmseizure.com. Go to filmseizure.com. Find all the places you can subscribe, get the podcast, follow us on the social medias and the whatnots. And that will be waiting for you on Wednesday morning. This upcoming Monday, also on filmseizure.com, catch my latest episode of Monster Mondays. It is The Satanic Rites of Dracula.
Ooh.
Yeah, the Dracula rites of Satan. That is, so that finishes out all of the Christopher Lee Hammer Dracula flicks. So I'm excited about that. So you can listen to that again at filmseizure.com this Monday afternoon. This upcoming Friday on my website, bmovieanima.com, you can read my review of Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. It's an interesting movie because Joel Grey plays somebody in yellowface, and that's awful. But at the same time, he also has some of the best lines of the movie in all the right ways. And then the movie is kind of fun also, but also really shitty.
So I liked Remo Williams when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah. You're exactly somebody I wrote about in that, where it's like, oh, somebody always says, hey, have you ever seen that movie? In this case, Remo Williams. and they'll say, "Hey, I always liked that as a kid." You know, it's like that and Buckaroo Banzai. Both of them, you'll find somebody who's like, "I always liked that movie."
So, are you saying I would like Remo?
Oh, you're cutting up again, Jason.
Yeah, you're cutting
Sorry.
up. You're cutting rugs.
Oh my god, I'm gonna have to restart before the next episode.
All right.
Are you saying that am I toast? You can't hear me at all?
No, go for it.
Are you saying I would like Buckaroo Banzai if I liked Remo Williams? Or would you like
vice versa?
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's possible that there's somebody out there that you run into that will say, "Hey, have you ever seen Remo Williams? I always liked that movie."
Yeah, I heard.
I would say the entertainment value and the quality are pretty similar.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Fair.
Okay.
Fair.
I'll check it out.
All right. So until next weekend, or until next week, rather, next Wednesday, when we have a big chill with a bunch of Michigan boomers. I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I am Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.